Good evening. You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. Within the plan to transform Ad-Duqm to an oil derivatives exporting city, the works of the oil berth are completed at Duqm port. The coronavirus cases exceed 18.2 million and more than 689,000 fatalities are reported worldwide. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. The mega projects at the Special Economic Zone in Duqm are underway at an accelerating pace. Work has already been completed at the oil berth in the port of Duqm. This oil berth is one of the projects that will change the investment plan or map at Duqm to be a city for exporting oil derivatives. More details in the following report.
To meet the needs of Duqm refinery and future petrochemical projects, work has been completed at the oil berth with the development and reclamation of 134 hectares of area adjacent to the secondary wave breakwater in the port of Duqm at the Special Economic Zone of Duqm. The oil berth in the port is one of the mega projects that will change the investment map of Duqm to be a city for exporting liquid refined products. The berth was constructed over 2 phases. The first phase was completed last year, and the second phase was completed in the second quarter of this year. Prior to the completion of the oil berth project in 2019, and with the number of requests from international oil companies to invest in Duqm, the Special Economic Zone Authority in Duqm decided to implement a second phase that included increasing the operations of berth reclamation, so that 55 hectares of area adjacent to the secondary wave breakwater would be developed and reclaimed, which made the berth ready for new companies' businesses. The first stage was also handed over to Duqm Refinery Company. Currently, the construction of reservoirs, buildings, and services related to the export of liquid refined products are being implemented within the works of the third package of the Duqm Refinery project. The first plan was to prepare part of the oil berth, or what is called the liquid and bulk materials berth, to be the export arm for the liquid refined products produced at the refinery. However, the increased demand for Duqm by international oil companies prompted the authority to develop the berth completely to accommodate the requests of a number of international oil companies that are preparing to come to Duqm to write a new success story from this city, which the world is increasingly interested in day after another. Under this pact, which is the first stage of the oil berth, 79 hectares of area adjacent to the secondary breakwater, which is 4.6 kilometers long, have been developed and reclaimed to construct the liquid and bulk materials berth. The dual berth marina has also been constructed with accessories and navigation equipment. The works included excavating about 26 million cubic meters of material for the works of deepening the basin and track channel at the port, which leads to the liquid dock to reach 18 meters. About 5 million cubic meters of these materials were used to reclaim and fill the site dedicated to the quay, in addition to the construction of the quay wall of 1 kilometer and installation of buoys and navigational aids devices. For the Sultanate of Oman television, Saleh bin Khalfan al-Rahbi.
The World Health Organization (WHO) said that there might never be a silver bullet answer to the new coronavirus, despite the rush to discover effective vaccines. The pandemic has killed at least 689,758 people worldwide, with at least 18 million people infected. The United States has the most deaths with 154,860, followed by Brazil with 94,104, Mexico by 47,746, the United Kingdom with 46,201, and India with 38,135 fatalities. As Australia's second city starts a 6-week curfew, officials order non-essential businesses to close from midnight Wednesday as they struggle to control a coronavirus outbreak. Meat production and construction firms will also be ordered to scale down operations from Friday. Hong Kong reported 80 new coronavirus cases today, dropping below 100 infections for the first time in 12 days as a team of Chinese officials began preparations for widespread testing in the global financial hub, which has seen a resurgence in cases. The initiative, which was announced by the Chinese government, marks the first time mainland health officials have assisted Hong Kong in its battle to control the pandemic. Since late January, around 3,600 people have been infected in Hong Kong, 37 of whom have died. The British government said it will begin issuing coronavirus tests that give results within 90 minutes and can tell whether someone has COVID-19 or another virus such as the flu. The government said the two UK-made tests will go to hospitals, nursing homes and laboratories starting next week. It said they will help medics differentiate between COVID-19 and other seasonal respiratory viruses. Health Secretary Matt Hancock said today that the new development would allow the government to expand the areas where they can test and make sure, crucially, that they get that turnaround faster so people get the results as soon as possible. One of the tests made by Oxford Nanopore analysis swab and saliva samples. The other is a DNA test that uses a machine from London-based firm DNA Nudge to give results without the need to send them to a lab. Indian drug maker Wockhardt Limited will supply millions of doses of multiple COVID-19 vaccines to the UK, including the one being developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University. The company has reserved fill and finish capacity, the final manufacturing step of putting vaccines into vials or syringes and packaging them, as part of an agreement with the UK government. The UK government has also reserved one fill and finish production line at a Wockhardt subsidiary in Wrexham, Wales, for its exclusive use for the next 18 months to secure supply. More than 150 vaccines are being developed and tested around the world to stop the pandemic, with 25 of them in human clinical trials. The Philippine president is agreeing to place the capital and outlying provinces back under a lockdown after medical groups declared that the country is waging a losing battle against the coronavirus amid an alarming surge in infections. The presidential spokesman said Metropolitan Manila, the capital region of more than 12 million people, and 5 densely populated provinces will revert to stricter quarantine restrictions for 2 weeks starting tomorrow. The move, which finance and economic officials oppose, will again prohibit non-essential travel outside of homes. President Rodrigo Duterte relaxed the country's lockdown on June 1st in an effort to restart the stalled economy. Still to come in our news bulletin. Tokyo's famed Kabukiza Theater, which called off from March due to the spread of the coronavirus, has restarted its performances. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. Israeli army backed by armored vehicles and tanks were seen massing across the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights today, hours after an army spokesperson said it targeted a group of 4 people who had planted explosives along the border fence with Syria. Tensions have risen in recent weeks along the Israeli-Syria frontier after a fighter of the Lebanese group Hezbollah was killed in an apparent Israeli strike on the edge of Damascus. Israel has since boosted its forces on its northern front where it borders Lebanon and Syria. The overnight encounter occurred at the same spot where until 2 years ago, Israel had operated a field hospital to treat Syrians who had been wounded in the Syrian civil war. Afghan forces have retaken a prison in the country's east targeted by the Daesh group the previous day in an attack that killed at least 29 people. The prison is believed to be holding hundreds of militants. The attack began yesterday. By today afternoon, the Afghan military said it had retaken the prison in Jalalabad, the capital of Nangarhar province. It is located some 150 kilometers east of Kabul. The attack highlighted the challenges ahead for Afghanistan, even as U.S. and NATO forces withdraw following the U.S.-Taliban peace deal. Evacuation orders remained in place early today for thousands of people after a wildfire in the mountains east of Los Angeles exploded in size and forced crews to battle flames in triple-digit heat. The Apple fire in Riverside County consumed more than 80 square kilometers of dry brush and timber. Officials allowed flames to run up the side of Mount San Giorgino, a 3,350-meter peak, because it wasn't safe to let crews work in such steep, rugged terrain. The blaze began as two adjacent fires reported Friday evening in Cherry Valley, near the city of Beaumont, about 137 kilometers east of downtown Los Angeles. Flames leapt along brushy ridge stops and came close to homes, while firefighters attacked it from the ground and air. America's first crewed spaceship to fly to the International Space Station in nearly a decade returned safely to Earth, splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico. The mission, carried out jointly by NASA and the private company SpaceX, demonstrates that the United States has the capacity once more to send its astronauts to space and bring them back. The SpaceX Crew Dragon Endeavour splashed onto the water off Pensacola, Florida, trailed by its 4 main parachutes. It was the first water landing for a crewed U.S. spaceship since the 1975 Apollo Soyuz mission. President Donald Trump, who had traveled to Florida for the capsule's launch 2 months ago, hailed its safe return. Endeavour will now undergo a 6-week inspection to certify the vessel as worthy of future low Earth orbit missions. Japan's stately traditional kabuki theater resumed performances on Saturday after a 5-month break due to the novel coronavirus, with musicians in masks, actors farther apart on stage, and only half the usual number of seats, which had been thoroughly disinfected beforehand. The reopening of Tokyo's famed Kabukiza Theater, which called off performances from March due to the spread of the coronavirus, came even as new cases have spiked to record highs around the country. On Saturday, Kabuki theater fans wearing masks went through temperature checks before going in to find their seats, in which were roped off to ensure adequate space. On stage, the number of musicians is limited and all wear draped black cloth masks from nose to chest. Performers stand farther back on stage and keep a greater than normal distance from each other. Actors and staff are completely different for each act to shorten contact. This is the Sultanate of Oman Television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main headlines once again. Within the plan to transform Ad-Duqm to an oil derivatives exporting city, the works of the oil berth are completed at Duqm port. The coronavirus cases exceed 18.2 million and more than 689,000 fatalities are reported worldwide. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night.